today. Exactly how will these things be implemented?
Yeah, I'm curious about that as well. General, I wonder how you received Pete Hegseth's speech yesterday.
Well, I thought a lot of it was sort of boiled over the rhetoric that we've been talking about in the military for decades. Lethality, war fighting, focus on the mission, more training and maintenance, less paperwork, all that. It was good. I liked it. It was a great performance in that respect. But when he talks about changing the standards, not following rules of engagement, just being out there killing, remember that the U.S. military overseas often has to conduct operations in the presence of civilian populations. You can't just kill willy-nilly. You have to have rules of engagement. They have to be followed and enforced. Otherwise, you're destroying the very effort you're making to resolve whatever the issue is that the government sent you in there for, whether it was Iraq and trying to get rid of the terrorists or whatever. Rules of engagement are important. So also, as far as hazing is concerned, a lot of armies did this. Before World War II, the Japanese army used to just beat the heck out of people. It produced a really obedient force. We can't do that, and we don't want to do that. The Russian army beats up its recruits. It's just a matter of ritual. We always believe that the best way to train is to have positive motivation, help each soldier and Marine be all he can be. So we want tough training. We want productive training. We want great units. A lot of this rhetoric that came out struck me as sort of culture war stuff. And we don't need culture war stuff in the United States military. What we need is good, solid training. We need great guidance from the President, the Secretary of Defense, and the policymakers. And our military is lethal. It will fight and win.
What was the message that you took away about women in the military? This idea that there needs to be a top male standard. Was there a diminished standard for women? I mean, did they let women, not fly planes as well as men? Was there a secondary standard to which women were not held to as high of a standard as men?
Well, not for most of these skills. We've had women fighter pilots, and when I was in Kosovo, running that campaign in 1999, we had women fighter pilots, and they were excellent flying those F-15s. They had great hand-to-eye coordination. They had G-tolerance. They knew their stuff. They were good. Yes, in the Army's revised physical fitness program, the Army Combat Fitness Test, there are different standards for different ages, different duty MOSs, and so forth. It's a very tough standard. It's for the combat soldier, it's really tough. Should we all be in great shape? Sure. Do we want fat generals and admirals? Absolutely not. Do we want good haircuts? Of course. But look, this force is a volunteer force. It's built on men and women. It's built on diversity. And the officer corps has to reflect that to some extent. And we've got to appreciate the men and women who volunteer to serve this country.
General Wesley.
After your name was mentioned earlier, General Herting said that you were a mentor of his, and your name came up because I was explaining that what I had the honor to learn when I served on the Armed Services Committee, being around generals and admirals. You always think the generals and the admirals are in charge. No, it's actually the retired generals and the retired admirals who are their mentors that they always look up to. So when you saw those 800 military leaders in that room, it reminds me of Douglas MacArthur's speech, duty, honor, courage, and a ghost, 1,000 ghosts rising from white crosses. There's just the spirit of duty, honor, country in that room. And they're not going to betray the oath they gave to the Constitution for a politician, are they? I mean, there's hundreds of years of tradition that they are bound by.
Well, look, I've been doing this a long time. That presentation at Quantico from the President and the Secretary of Defense is one of the most bizarre, unsettling events I've ever encountered. The President sounded incoherent, exhausted, rabidly partisan, at times stupid, meandering, couldn't hold a thought together. That audience is an apolitical institution. They will be respectful and follow all legal orders willingly. And by the way, it was not just the generals, it was the senior enlisted advisors for all those commands. They hold the culture of the armed forces in their hands. And then the Secretary of Defense gave a Rambo presentation, at times pretty good, whiskers, shaving, physical fitness, a first sergeant's talk at Reveille, not bad. But at other times, he's basically calling into question whether minorities and women were DEI or were they promotions based on merit. Nothing could be farther from the truth. By the way, the group he was talking to have been in combat for 20 years. Their sons and daughters served. A bunch of them got killed and maimed. It was a highly inappropriate use of the armed forces, never mind the unsettling things about using military force in American cities. A very strange day in American life.
General McCaffrey, we'll close on you. I'm just wondering what you're hearing from your colleagues in the military and moving forward, what you're most concerned about and what citizens can do.
Well, look, one thing must be said, the National Guard, 430,000 troops, is a national treasure. When there's a disaster, they'll be there. They're our friends and neighbors. They're well equipped, they're disciplined, they're responsive, but we do not want American military personnel on the streets of our cities arresting civilians, collecting evidence, or trying to do community policing. It's ineffective, it's against American values, it's an outrage, and we need to stand up and say that categorically.
Retired four-star Army General Barry McCaffrey, thank
It does run most of the cities that are in bad shape. We have many cities in great shape, too, by the way. I want you to know that. But it seems that the ones that are run by the radical left Democrats, what they've done to San Francisco, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, they're very unsafe places. And we're going to straighten them out one by one. And this is going to be a major part for some of the people in this room. That's a war, too. It's a war from within. Controlling the physical territory of our border is essential to national security. But I want to salute every service member who has helped us carry out this critical mission. It's really a very important mission. And I told Pete we should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military, National Guard, but military. Because we're going into Chicago very soon. That's a big city with an incompetent governor, stupid.
Using American cities as training grounds for the United States military. That was part of President Trump's partisan address yesterday to hundreds of America's top military leaders at a Marine Corps base in Quantico, Virginia. Joining us now, MSNBC contributor Mike Barnicle, retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General Mark Herdling. Good morning to you both. General, I'll start with you and just your reaction. I'm sure you've talked to some of your old colleagues, maybe who are in the room or some who just watched at home. What was the reaction to that spectacle yesterday?
Yeah, Willie, I did talk to a few, many people in that room I've served with. I didn't retire that long ago, so some of those senior members were junior members when I was still in the service. What was interesting is it came about in two parts. First of all, Secretary Hegseth's address. I took notes as he spoke, as I was watching it. And just some of the things that I made bullet points about were Liberation Day, kill things and break people, or kill people and break things, war crimes, Geneva Convention elimination, rules of engagements are unnecessary, suggesting women can't meet the standards, returning to the days of drill sergeants smoking recruits during basic training, suggesting the elimination of IG actions, especially as he's being investigated for the use of signal apps by those IGs. Hawking his own book at the end, The War on Warriors, I've read, and it's a compilation of thoughts from a disgruntled soldier who has very little understanding of strategic implications of various actions. Then when it turned to the president, you've already addressed this, meandering. Just all sorts of issues, much like the UN speech he gave. So many things to talk about from that speech, but the war from within, as you just mentioned, and putting soldiers on American streets to train how to react to different enemies from within were two of the highlights that I wrote down. And it was just a combination of two things that I believe were leading to what we might see next. And the other thing I'd say is President Trump thrives on applause and cheering and interactions with an audience. And when he didn't get that and instead got quiet professionalism from the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines in the audience, that likely rattled them from the very beginning. And that silence wasn't disrespect. It was restraint and discipline and adherence to the oath of office. Yesterday was, to me, a collective reminder of our professional culture that we have in the military that transcends politics. It was on full display, and it was interesting to watch from both sides of the audience.
It was the oath to the Constitution, not to the man standing in front of them. So can you speak, General, just for people watching this morning who have so much coming at them 24 hours a day, why this you view as so unusual and so dangerous to be talking about using American cities as, quote, training grounds for the American military and having the United States military go in and effectively do domestic policing of.
What you're witnessing here are military people saying we're not putting up with the culture war BS. We're not going to put up with you wasting our time and resources. Because again, there's a distinction between good faith ideological disagreements, which presidents have, typically Democratic presidents and Republican presidents, but even within parties. I'm sure that Biden's philosophy for the military probably differed in some key ways from Obama. And the instructions given to generals probably filtered down a little bit. And those generals probably suggested very politely, understanding that the president's the commander-in-chief, but they're the ones that actually know what they're talking about, what would and wouldn't work. And some of the changes would have been popular, maybe very popular, and some would be quite unpopular. But Donald Trump's moves are some of them are unconstitutional, right? Some of them, even if technically legal, spit in the face of the role the military should play and the role I think a lot of people in the military envision themselves playing, which is a defender of the country, not an oppressor of their own people. But beyond all that, it's the BS stuff. Like, we're going to make generals who are often older people do like strength and conditioning stuff. Like, that's not what generals do. It's culture war stuff. I'm all for example, maybe doing cognitive testing for older generals. I'm all, for example, ensuring that mental health is a strength among top leadership, because if you're mentally not well, that'll affect those that you're responsible to take care of. All of that might be fine, right? It might be fine. But the idea that your 61-year-old general needs to be able to do some pull-ups, that's dumb. That would have been dumb in the 1700s, but it's certainly dumb in modern warfare, right? It's just all culture war stuff, because the dumb people that voted for Trump, and they're indirectly, I guess, voted for Hegseth to be Secretary of Defense, they love that, but it doesn't actually do anything. It doesn't do a single thing. All this does do is take away resources. And I'm not even talking about the money, because you could cut the U.S. military budget. It deserves to be cut, maybe substantively, and it'll still be plenty. But there's only so many hours in the day of these top military figures. Time is more valuable than money with the U.S. military, in my view. They have all the money they need and more. Too much. But they only have 24 hours in the day, the same as the rest of us. And every second you waste on this is a second you don't spend on actually protecting Americans.